Welcome back to the University of Southern California Institute of Armenian Studies. This series that we call After War, Before Peace was born immediately after the signing of the cessation of hostilities document in November, after a war between Armenians and Azerbaijan that lasted 45 days, and at the conclusion of which Armenia suffered a very significant defeat. The war was fought not just by Armenians and Azerbaijan, but also by Turkish forces who offered not just armaments, but also strategic advice, and perhaps also participated in the actual waging of the war. Other neighbors, Russia certainly has been a player in how the war was both conducted and certainly now in its aftermath. Iran has or has not been. All of these are issues we're going to talk about, but today we're going to start with Turkey. I neglected to mention Georgia. Georgia too is an important piece of, if not the war itself, then certainly the aftermath of the war. Today's conversation is about Turkey's participation, its impact, the reasons for its participation, the way that the war was seen within Turkey, and the way Turkey's participation has been seen outside of Turkey. Of course, all of this therefore means that we will be talking about Turkey's own national interests, foreign policy, and how it has navigated its relations with the other regional powers in order to continue to do what it has been doing with Azerbaijan in regards to the Karabakh conflict. We have two guests. Our first guest, before our first guest, we have our permanent first guest and host, Emil Sanamyan, a Caucasus analyst, friend, who is my partner in this effort, this multi-part series to try to understand the various complexities of the situation after war, before peace. Emil, welcome back.
Hello.
So our first guest is Garo Paylan, a founding member of Turkey's People's Democratic Party, or the HDP, which is a center-left party pro-minority rights, pro-Kurdish rights. He is a member of Turkey's parliament and outspoken on minority rights, including the rights of Turkey's Armenian community, which, depending on how you count, is either 50,000, the old Istanbul Armenians, or 100,000 if you count migrant workers from Armenia, or 2 million if you count all of those that have trace of Armenian ancestry throughout Turkey. And these numbers are important, and after I welcome Garo, I will tell you why. Garo, welcome.
Hello, Salpi. Thank you for having me.
I'm grateful to you for making the time to talk about what is a complex topic for everybody, and I'm sure for you, sitting in either Istanbul or Ankara and dealing with the fallout. So Garo, I mentioned the numbers of the Armenian community, either 50,000 of the old Bolsahai is the old community, or, up to 2 million if we count those who trace some aspect of their ancestry to an Armenian grandmother or grandfather. And the reason these numbers are important is because what happened in Turkey, how it was perceived by government, how it was presented by government, how it was presented by media, impacted how it was perceived and impacted the Armenian community of Turkey. So that's some of what we'd like to talk to you about today. Let's start with first Turkey and its perception of what it was doing in Karabakh with Azerbaijan. For Turkey, was this an Armenia issue, or was this something else?
Salpi, in wars, I believe the first casualty is the truth. And in Turkey, they first killed the truth. And they used a war propaganda and saying that Armenians have started the war, and they attacked to the civilian centers and killed Azeri civilians. And for 30 years, they have invaded the Azeri territory. So Azeris need to take those territory back. So Turkey openly were backing Azerbaijan in this war, and they used the war propaganda, and especially in their media machine. Most of the media is controlled by the ruling party, Erdogan's party, and they used the war propaganda, and they used hate crimes, hate speeches, especially against the Armenians. And there were demonstrations took place in front of the Armenian Patriarchy. And I was maybe the only one who opposed to this war, and I was a target. There were several full-page ads on Erdogan's newspapers, telling me about, writing me about, I was a traitor, and I was opposing to this war. And so this was a war propaganda, and in this war propaganda, yeah.
So help us understand parts of what you said. When you say Erdogan's papers, you mean the media that is pro-government or controlled by government?
Yeah.
Okay.
Papers which are controlled by Erdogan. That is what I mean. And of course, the televisions. Every day, day and night for hours, they used war propaganda against Armenia and Armenians, and especially against me. Because I was opposing to that, and I was trying to give some information about truth, but unfortunately, that war machine have targeted me as well.
Help us understand whether the vilification of Armenia, Armenians, the enemy, taking Azeri lands, was that an instrument, a propaganda instrument only, or was that in fact the purpose of Turkey's partnering with Azerbaijan to wage this war? What was Turkey's interest?
After 2015, Erdogan have established another coalition with its nationalist partner. After their coalition have ended with the Gülenist groups, they had another coalition with the nationalist groups, and they have targeted the Kurds first of all. We had the peace process in Turkey. That peace process have ended, and we lost it unfortunately. And they started the war against the Kurds in Turkey, and out Turkey as well, in Syria and in Iraq as well. And they invested so much to the weapons. And of course, we were suffering. The Kurds were suffering, and they jailed everyone who were now trying to keep the peace and using the peace discourse. And they invested so much to the weapons. And they used sophisticated weapons, drones and other sophisticated weapons. Billions of dollars were invested to the weapons. And those years, I had deep concerns about that this war machine might turn its face to another region, to Nagorno-Karabakh, Artsakh. And I just vocal about this in Armenia.
You spoke about this, yes.
Yeah, I talked about this, telling to the Armenians that the war machine might turn its face to Azerbaijan, because Erdogan have lost its story about telling that we will solve our problems with Armenia, with the Kurds, with Greece, and only only using a nationalist rhetoric and solving the problems with the hard power. That is his goal. And he's trying to solve his problem with the Kurds with war, unfortunately, and it's not solving any problem. But he have invested to the weapons. Unfortunately, my deep concern happened last year with a deep trauma, and unfortunately, that war have started, and. But moreover, we couldn't even speak and oppose to that war in Turkey. I was the only one, as I said. But
why?
I was a target.
Why were you the only one?
Because there are no conservative nationalists in Turkey, which is the ruling party, Erdogan's party, and his friend Nationalist Party. But the secular ones are nationalist as well, unfortunately, the opposing parties. Except my party, there are secular parties in Turkey who are opposing to Erdogan, but they are nationalists as well. In the parliament, they signed a declaration, 4 parties together, conservative and seculars, that they are with Azerbaijan and supporting Azerbaijan. And unfortunately, they only cared about, of course, there were attacks to civilians in the Azeri territory, but they ignored about the attacks to Stepanakert. Unfortunately, there was a one-way propaganda in Turkey and ignoring about human rights violations in Arsah, unfortunately. I was only vocal about it, and I was a target.
Emil, I want to ask about Turkey-Russia. Do you want to jump in before we go there?
Yes, sure. Yeah, that's first of all, much respect for your courage in continuing to pursue the line of Turkey with a human face, and with all the pressures coming on in the past number of years. As far as this long festering conflict, we've had a Turkish position over many years that was in favor of Azerbaijan. We actually, in the early 90s, had threats by Turkish leaders at the time, Turgut Özal, Süleyman Demirel, to sort of take some military action against Armenia. However, what we had at the time is there's some outreach from Armenian government towards Turkish political establishment, and also sort of more robust Russian European response. Obviously, we didn't have that Russian European response this time around for multiple reasons. But have you seen any effort by the Armenian government to talk to Turkey prior to this war, maybe during this war, to sort of mitigate the extent to which Turkish military was involved?
Or even any outreach from the other direction? Has there been dialogue at all?
Unfortunately, there was no dialogue at all. I wish there was. Now I tried to establish it, but I tried to speak to the Secretary of State and several officials, but no, they wanted somehow to have a dialogue, but they said they have no dialogue at all with the Armenian officials. So there was no dialogue at all. No, as I said, Turkey openly supported Azerbaijan, and their goal was to make a nationalist wave in Turkey as well. It happened, but no, I think the scenario was not written by Turkey. The scenario was written by some other big country, which was Russia. And Russia have written, I think with the Russian permission, this war have started. Erdogan could not start this war without the Russian permission. And Erdogan supported Azerbaijan. But at the end, you have to look to the final, who have won the war, who have benefited from this war, that we see that only Russia have benefited from this war, and Russia is sitting on Azerbaijan, Karabakh, and Armenia as well. They have the biggest leverage ever on the South Caucasus. So Turkey have lost its leverage, and unfortunately will not be able to have leverage on the following months or years, I don't know. So and Turkey cannot establish any kind of a game plan, unfortunately. I told about it. No, of course you can. I told to my colleagues in Turkey that of course you can support Azerbaijan this war, but what will happen afterwards? You will lose your leverage on Armenia, and you will not be a peace establisher. But they didn't listen to me. Now they say you were right, but we lost that chance, unfortunately.
Do you think Turkey will want to pursue, and Erdogan has referred to this once or twice, about this is now that the Karabakh territories issue is resolved, Azerbaijan has its territories, now it's time to talk about or think about opening the border. The key has always been in Ankara. It's not as if Armenia closed the border. The border was closed by Turkey. Do you think that given this very tense, still unstable, lack of trust environment, do you think that Turkey, Erdogan, Ankara will still attempt to pursue opening the border?
I think so. They are vocal about it, and I'm talking to them, and they say they want it, but they think they say we are ready, but they think Armenia is not ready for it. But they say if Armenia is ready, we are ready to open the borders. But I say, before opening the borders, we have to build confidence. So confidence building measures or steps have to be taken. But we have to have a dialogue to speak about what are the confidence building measures. So we have to think about it. But I think there are criticisms coming from Armenia as well. Maybe Armenian people even are not ready to just think about a dialogue now. But I think diplomats or politicians are for these days to just we have to think about how can we start the dialogue, or how can we build the confidence building measures. That's what we have to think about nowadays.
Emil, what do you think? You think Armenia is ready?
No, I'm not sure anybody's ready. And before being ready for that, I mean, you have to kind of go through the more immediate steps, like diplomatic relations, which still don't exist between Armenia and Turkey. And obviously, again, it's Turkish position to not have those relations. And if we go back to the immediate history of Armenian-Turkish relations, again, this was a Turkish position going back to 1991, 1992, not to establish diplomatic relations with Armenia, even before Karabakh War. So I don't see that changing unless there is sort of a clear Armenian statement with regard to Turkish territorial integrity, sort of joining and forgetting about the Armenian genocide and all that history. I don't see normalization happening immediately. I may be wrong about that, but I think I would disagree with Garo Paylan about the outcome of the war. I think from Russia's perspective, as a matter of fact, this was a big setback from Turkish involvement in this fighting, and they're very concerned about the extent Turkish military presence right now in Azerbaijan. And to an extent, this is sort of a personal victory for Erdogan, in the sense that his son-in-law sort of runs the company that built this drone fleet, and that played a very pivotal role in this conflict, and sort of brought both political and immediate financial dividends to Erdogan's family. I might, coming off sort of the ledge here, but I do think if Armenia really wants to have a relationship with Erdogan, the Turkish government, there has to be some kind of immediate political benefit that they could present to Erdogan. I don't know, maybe they want to buy those drones themselves, or they want to find another way to support Erdogan in that sense, and that I think that could create basis for a mutually beneficial relationship. But beyond that, just on the basis of sort of goodwill, it's very hard to establish that relationship, considering how transactional politics have become in Armenia's neighborhood and generally around the world.
Garo, I want to ask you a question about perceptions, about how generally, not simply now this conflict and its aftermath, but generally, how is Azerbaijan perceived within Turkey and Turkish media? Is it a relationship of brothers and equals? Is it one of tension? What is it?
Azerbaijan have invested billions, 10 billions of dollars to Turkey. Bought several industrial, places and putting so much money to this world. Unfortunately, 10 years ago, the Western money was coming to Turkey to invest. But now only Qatar and Azeri money is coming to Turkey to invest, and Erdogan needs that money and benefits from that money. And moreover, now uses an Islamist discourse with Qatar and other Arab countries, and uses this Azeri Brotherhood discourse with the Azeris. And that is why Azerbaijan has a leverage over Turkey. Unfortunately, we don't have that leverage at all, Armenians. Two ways. We just say no. We don't trust. Armenians don't trust Turkey, and we don't have any kind of a leverage because our borders are closed, and the diaspora that doesn't care about Turkey at all, and so we don't have any kind of a leverage over Turkey. That is why Erdogan is a pragmatic and opportunist leader. He cares about his power only, and he cares about the cards. He used this card after he established a nationalist coalition and benefited both sides, both parties which are in the coalition. And now he will go on with this coalition. But there is a window of opportunity. Erdogan, now there is a Biden administration. And with Trump, Erdogan could use that autocratic discourse. Now he needs to have another story, because he had that story to solve the problems with Armenians, Kurds, and Greeks. Now he needs another story. Easy story. Kurdish story is not an easy story, or the Greek story, but easy story is the Armenia story to establish again. That he is willing to open the borders and have good relations with Armenia. This is not a sincere will. This is a pragmatic will to be vocal that I am ready to open the borders with Armenia and solve our problems. He will use this discourse, but I think Armenia will not be ready for it, and he will again say, "I offered this to Armenia and they just rejected it." That is what he is going to use in the following months, unfortunately.
And we will continue to talk about this aspect of instrumentalizing the conflict by all sorts of pairs of powers as we continue our conversation with your old friend Cengiz Aktar. But before we go to Cengiz, can I please ask you about your personal situation? Do you still have immunity as a member of parliament?
Yeah, I still have the immunity, but unfortunately, they want to lift our immunity and jail us in the following months. There is a big risk for that. They might lift our immunities in the following months. Because they want to get rid of HDP, my party, which is offering peace between Kurds, Turks, and Armenians, and to establish a democratic Turkey. That Erdogan and his nationalist friend doesn't want. That is why they want to demolish my party, but they can't do it. Instead, they want to jail the important actors in my party. 9 of my friends, including our co-chairs, might be jailed in the following months if our immunities will be lifted.
Well, that's as terrible place to end as any, considering so many of these episodes of ours have dealt with the international community doing or not doing anything in situations of injustice. So here is another example of how the international community, if that means the European Union and the United States, really are not in a position of sufficient power to intervene. But that's another discussion. Garo Paylan, we're grateful to you for making the time to participate and talk about what cannot be an easy topic to talk about. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Salpi. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And now we're going to welcome Professor Cengiz Aktar, who is an economist by training from the Sorbonne University, except that he spent the last several decades as an educator, a journalist, really delving deeply into international affairs. He lives now in Greece, teaches at Athens University. And Cengiz Aktar was among not just the friends of Hrant Dink, but after Hrant Dink's assassination, one of those who spearheaded what was called the I Apologize campaign, calling on Turkish citizens to acknowledge responsibility, to be aware of the genocide of 1915. And if I remember right, it garnered over 40,000 signatures. I want to welcome Cengiz Aktar now to this conversation. Welcome, Cengiz.
Thank you, Salpi. Hello, greetings, Emil.
Cengiz, thank you. Thank you for making the time and for helping us talk about Turkey, Turkey's foreign policy, national interests, particularly during and in the aftermath of the Karabakh War. I'm sure you heard parts of the conversation with Garo Paylan, and I guess the fundamental first question is the instrumentalization of Armenia and Armenians in the way in which Turkey waged this war. That is, if you ask, 9.5 out of 10 Armenians, they will tell you that Armenia and Armenians is what Erdogan worries about day and night. It's number one on his agenda in the morning, it's number one on his agenda at night. Is that true? Were Armenians, Artsakh and Karabakh, was that the purpose of Turkey's engagement in this conflict, or was it something else?
I mean, frankly, Turks don't know Armenia, even less where is Artsakh. I think this war was extremely instrumental when it comes to the countless foreign adventures of Mr. Erdogan. He's stuck in Iraq, he's stuck in Syria, he's stuck in Libya, he's stuck in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Aegean and name it. I mean, this was a clear-cut victory. And I think this is, in my opinion, the very first lesson that I draw from it. I mean, and they went for it. Mind you, Turkey was the only country, actually in the world, who was, telling the Azeris go for it, whereas the rest of the world was calling for the cessation of the hostilities when it started. You remember? So, for me, it was very clear. I mean, they were really looking for a victory there, and they got it.
What about those who say that it was a victory, they went in, they're not stuck, but they wanted to be engaged and permanently present, and they didn't get that. They have a monitoring center, right, Emil? A monitoring center run together with the Azerbaijan, but they really don't have boots on the ground, and that was a loss for Turkey. Is that right?
Of course. I mean, Turkey is not a player in the Caucasus. Turkey left Caucasus since Nuri Pasha, 1918, Baku. And it's a long time ago, it's more than 100 years ago. And of course, they are desperate to get a foothold in the sub-region. They thought they may get one now with the victory in Artsakh. And unfortunately, I mean, the landlord, Russia, is thinking the other way around. I mean, and I don't think in the years and decades to come, Turkey will ever get a strong position in the southern Caucasus. I'm not talking about Georgia; it's another matter. But as for the countries we are talking about, Turkey has got no chance to have a permanent, influence. It can have a presence in Azerbaijan and will continue to do so. This cooperation agreement, the security and cooperation agreement, is more than 10 years old, as you know, 2010, and they will stay. They will do everything to stay on Azerbaijan. But for in Artsakh and the other places, and Armenian border, Nakhichevan and so on, all these grand designs will have huge difficulties, to get realized.
You said Georgia is another matter, but Georgia has been a very important piece of the Turkey-Azerbaijan relationship. And now, with the promise of other transport connections between Turkey and Azerbaijan, does Georgia become less important for Turkey? Can Turkey afford for that to happen?
Frankly, I mean, this prospective road from the Turkish border crossing Armenia and from Nakhichevan and crossing Armenia and then entering Azerbaijan, this is a pipe dream. I mean, I don't think that Russians will do everything to delay this this famous road. Therefore, the dependence of Turkey on Georgia will continue for a foreseeable future, in my opinion. Zalkiani was in town yesterday, I think, and he probably Georgia is under heavy influence of Turkey, economically speaking, at least. So, but and then of course they will continue as before, to be a kind of bridge between the Turkish territory and Azeri territory.
Emil, what do you think?
Well, Cengiz already brought up Nuri Pasha, and I think it's very relevant. I don't think Turkey has had the extent of military influence in the Caucasus since the end of World War One. When to remind our viewers, at the end of World War One in 1918, Turkish army renamed the Army of Islam. Caucasus Army of Islam. They went into Azerbaijan and they took Baku, and they also took Shushi, just as they did this time around. So this is a very comparative scenario as far as Turkish military involvement playing a real pivotal role in the struggle between Azerbaijan and Armenia over Karabakh, which took place in 1918 as well. Now, what is also significant about Turkish military involvement this time around is that this is really the first war in the former Soviet space, if you look at the entirety of the former Soviet space, where a non-former Soviet republic, as a matter of fact, a member of NATO, was involved in direct combat. This has never happened before in the entirety of the former Soviet space since 1991 and of the Soviet Union. So this is a very, very, very negative precedent for the Russian government, who viewed this area as an area where the only major power is Russia. So now we are seeing potential repercussions of the situation in Ukraine. Ukraine is also buying has bought Turkish drone technology, and there might be a reignition of the conflict in that area in eastern Ukraine. We could see repercussions in Central Asia as well. So when we talk about the fact that Turkey did not accomplish sort of a sit at the table or maybe a formal role as a mediator, I don't think that was really a major goal for Turkey. The major goal was to demonstrate its power, which they did, and to replicate that demonstration in other places. What happened in Karabakh could have been predicted after Turkish drones were able to stop I don't want to get into details, but make a significant contribution to the Libyan civil war, and before that, to attack Syrian Bashar Assad army in Syria and cause serious damage to the Syrian army after Russian forces actually bombed Turkish army in Syria. So this is we are at a moment right now where Turkish and Russian interests are directly clashing in the Caucasus. However, they're trying to manage that clash, just like they're trying to manage it in Syria and Libya. But this is a moment of creates a more moment of great difficulty for Armenia. What we've observed in the past 6 months.
Well, but there's another way to look at that relationship, and we're also going to talk about Iran, obviously, but Iran and Turkey. But on the one hand, yes, Russia is probably not very pleased that Turkey is immediately in its yard. On the other hand, this is NATO's second largest power that has on its own determined to have this sort of military adventure in the post-Soviet space, in the Russian space. Is this an intention of Erdogan's, Cengiz, to demonstrate its independence from Western alliances, Western values, Western involvement, since the West doesn't seem to really want Turkey in its structures? At least that's how Erdogan is interpreting this. So is this really just tension, or is it also Russia being very happy that here's this NATO ally playing its own game? And NATO ally Turkey proud that it's playing its own game?
Well, I mean, let's start. I mean, you asked 3-4 questions in one sentence, but let's start with the NATO factor. I mean, of course, I mean it's the first time since 1989 that a NATO country is getting involved in the former Soviet territory, for sure. But with the fantastic exception of the United Kingdom, who is playing a very dirty game in the region, in my opinion, no other NATO country, has even mentioned this Turkish presence in the sub-region. So it's, related to that. I don't think that Erdogan is calculating all these things, really. I mean, he is far from being an Einstein in these matters. He is playing by the ear, and he has experimented a kind of balancing act, between the US and Russia in Syria. He is very happy with that. And as long as it goes, he will go for it. But does he have a plan for the D+1, or for the next move? I don't think so. I mean, it's really, he is saving the day everywhere, actually.
Every day.
In Libya, in Mesopotamia, everywhere. So Erdogan is is at the end of the day is in a very weak position. We shouldn't exaggerate his power. I mean, he arrived and he reached this position because all the others were closing their eyes. I mean, look what happened with these drones. I mean, without the imported technology, and from where? I mean, from various countries, these drones cannot fly. I mean, Turkey doesn't have the high-tech, capabilities for this drone. I mean, they just build the carcass, you see, and that's it. So, I mean, it's I think it's an overblown might, really, and frankly, it's and it has an impact, of course, in the weak countries in the region. But when it comes to the tough guys, of course, they can follow suit.
So we've got 3 important areas to cover still, so let's try to do that. You threw in the United Kingdom, so I can't let that one go. You want to quickly explain your reference?
I mean, frankly, this, the MI6 guy, who was the ambassador in Ankara before, Vesmakot, he is now running the MI6, and this very, curious fellow and I think the UK's, fundamental aim is Russia. So anything which may harm Russia, you just have to go through the Chatham House activities. It's almost exclusively about Russia, and frankly, among the NATO countries, I don't see any other, member of the alliance who is that adamant, in confronting Russia. And I think they were happy to push, Erdogan towards this war. I mean, he was also very happy to go for it, but I think the UK was quite instrumental in this.
We have to reflect on the reality, though, where just in the last couple of years, United Kingdom became sort of battleground for Russia going after its opponents, Russian government going after its political opponents, leaders, with the famous poisoning case. So it's normal, I think, to expect from British government, British intelligence services to focus on Russia for that reason. But we also obviously are mindful of the situation after Brexit, where sort of UK is positioning itself as in this newfound role of an independent European player, where one of the first moves they made was a trade deal with Turkey, and as I think a reflection of that closeness or attempt to be close with Turkey, there was credible reports that basically United Kingdom blocked the United Nations resolutions aiming to stop the fighting in Karabakh in mid-October. So that's clear the reality. And we go back to the 1918 references. After the Turkish army left Karabakh and the Armenians were ready to take Karabakh back, British were the ones preventing Armenian forces from doing that. So we keep that in mind as well.
So for those viewers and listeners who think we're going off into all of these tangents, I think the whole point of this conversation is that Turkey's role in the world is so complex with so many different relationships that at many turns, the situation with Azerbaijan vis-a-vis Karabakh, Artsakh, Armenia is going to be a piece of a larger puzzle and not the point itself. Let's talk about Iran, please. The Iranian foreign minister made a 5-country tour not too far in the past, a couple of weeks ago, which was an unusual sort of tour for him. Where does where does the Iranian relationship fit for Turkey?
Well, as far as the sub-region is concerned, of course, there has been very amateurish declarations, and actually they sang a song, you remember, in Baku, which irritated the Iranians.
Yeah.
This Azeri matter is something which is on hold and freeze since 1639 between the Ottoman Empire and Turkey and Iran. I mean, 30 to 35% of the Iranian population is of Azeri origin, but Turkey never mentioned this. So this is a kind of blackout. And now with this new friendship and which is becoming more and more visible, with Baku. Of course, Iran doesn't like all these things. But on the other hand, we should never forget this Shia factor. At the end of the day, Azeris and Turks might be of the same ethnic origin, but there the yardstick is the religion, not the ethnicity.
And Turks are Sunni.
Exactly.
Turks are Sunni.
As for Mesopotamia, I think in both in Iraq and in Syria, the Turkish designs are overlapping with the Iranian designs, and they're getting serious by the day. And there has been no direct clash yet between the Turkish forces and the Iranian forces on the ground, both in Iraq and Syria, but it can happen anytime. and the things are getting, extremely tense by the day. Not maybe directly because Shabi was involved. It's a grouping, very close Shia grouping, Arab, of course, very close to Iran, and they have threatened to Turkey. And the last days, the Turkish ambassador in Tehran was called to the ministry, and vice versa. So. As always, I mean, these two countries are looking at each other without touching them. It never went to war since 1639, but it's far from being a partnership. Except maybe when it comes to kill the Kurds.
So it's those exceptions that are going to matter to Armenians and Armenians of Karabakh as well. Finally, do you agree with Garo Paylan's assessment that Turkey would not have entered this war without Putin's knowledge and acquiescence?
I'm afraid, yes. I mean, yes, exactly. I mean, there's no way this war would have happened without the knowledge of Putin. No way. Yeah.
Emil, you get the last word.
There's certainly knowledge, but it appears that Russia does not have a veto on Erdogan's actions and does not, cannot stop Erdogan from selling things to Ukraine or recognizing Crimea as part of Ukraine. So there's a limit to Putin's ability to influence Erdogan. I like your references to 17th century, and I want to bring in my reference to 18th century. I studied the period of 1720s in the Caucasus, and there's credible evidence that the Ottoman forces, as they were in the Caucasus at the time, committed genocide against Azerbaijanis at the time, Shiite population of Azerbaijan. But now, 2 centuries later, everybody forgot about it. Thanks to Russia's secularization efforts, Sunni-Shiite difference is not that important, and we have a very close-knit alliance between Azerbaijanis and Turks. Just living on a hopeful note, maybe in another century we could have that with the Armenians and Turks when all of this really nasty experiences, including last year's, will be substantially distant in the past.
Well, considering that is a rare positive note from Emil, I'm going to end right there. Cengiz Aktar, thank you very much for joining us. I don't think this will be the last time.
Oh, no, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. And Emil, of course, thank you very much. And thanks to all of you for following this series, After War, Before Peace. We will continue with conversations about Iran and how Iran has fared in this conflict and its aftermath. And of course, we will go back to a conversation about Georgia and Russia. Thank you for following After War, Before Peace. This is the video cast. The audio podcasts can be found on any of the platforms that you visit. Thank you for following After War, Before Peace, and thank you for joining us at the University of Southern California Institute of Armenian Studies.